Okay, so we're looking at our math notebook. So I have my setup where I have my objectives up top. And my objective for today is I can divide decimals fluently. My main idea and vocab terms, dividend, divisor, quotient, I'll be using those today as we go through some examples. So let's look at our example on page 13. So this has Mark's work. Some friends went to lunch and split the bill equally. If each person paid $6.75, how many people went to lunch? Use a diagram or equation to explain your thinking. So let's look at Mark's work below. Let n be the number of people and Mark's equation. So Mark is setting up an equation where he has 6.75 times n equals $27. So we know the total from our receipt was $27. So now we are going to figure out what n is. So I need to balance my equation. So I'm going to divide 6.75 to both sides. And when I solve this problem, I will find what n equals. So to solve a division problem, I am going to put my divisor on the outside here. So 6.75 is my divisor. My dividend is 27, and my quotient will end up being whatever n is. So when we are dividing with a decimal point, we are going to move our decimal point over so that we have a whole number for our divisor. So I have to move this over 2 spaces to get my divisor. Now I need to do the same thing to my dividend on this side. So my decimal is behind the 7. I'm going to move it over 2 spaces and add in zeros. So now my division problem is 675 divided by 2,700 or 2,700. Now I am going to solve this division problem. I will need to do multiplication to figure out what number goes into um, how many times does 675 go into 2,700. So pause right here so that you are able to do the multiplication for this problem. So I'm going to do 675 times 1. That will give me 675. Now 675 times 2 will give me 10 times, carry the 1, carry my 1, 1,350. Now I'm going to skip the 3 and go straight to the 4 and see if using that number will get me closer. Carry my 2, 30, and this is 2,700. So I am going to put my 4 over my last 0 so that my decimal points here are lined up. And this is 2,700. I'm going to subtract, and I have 0. So for this problem, 4 people ate at the restaurant. Now let's try another division problem to practice those steps of dividing whole numbers by whole numbers with decimals. So let's look at example number 3A. So I have compatible numbers of estimate. Use the compatible numbers to estimate and then divide. So I'm going to estimate 809 and 40 cents, 809.40 divided by 12. So my divisor is 12. I can round that to 10. And then this is close to 8, 810. So in the book, they use 840. So let's go ahead and use 840. And I can divide that and I would get 70. So as far as my estimate, my actual answer might be somewhere close to 70. So let's set up my division problem. My divisor goes on the outside, so 12, and my dividend is on the inside, 40. So I'm going to make sure my decimal point goes up right above each other so they're lined up. Let me scoop this up so you can see what I am doing. And okay, so I have 809.4 or 40, and I want to see how many times 12 can go into that. So what I'm going to do first is 12 goes into 80. 6 times, I have 72. I'm going to subtract, and I am going to borrow from the 8, and that will give me 8. I'm going to bring down my 9, and 12 goes into 89. 7 times. 7 times 12 is 84. I'm going to subtract and then continue with my pattern of bringing down my number. Goes into it 4 times. 48. I'm going to subtract. I have 6, bring down my 0, and it goes into 5 times. So this problem will give me 67.45. Now, let's say we're going to practice with one that has a decimal in the divisor. So just like our first one where there was a decimal in the divisor, that's when we're going to move over our decimal point. So I don't have any space left on this side. I'm going to flip over and I'm going to do an example with a decimal point in the divisor and in the dividend. So example 3B has find $4.20 divided by $1.40. So both of them have a divisor. Both multiply both the divisor and dividend by the same power of 10. So powers of 10, so that's multiplying by 10 by 100. So pretty much you're trying to get a whole number. So you're moving your decimal over to get a whole number. So I have $1.40 divided by $4.20. I'm going to move my decimal over twice over here and then twice over here. Now, I will have 140 divided by 420. I'm going to do some multiplication on the side here. 140 times 2. That will give me 2,800, 280 rather, and that's not enough. So let's do 140 times 3, and that will give me 420. So let's do 3 up top and 420. Subtracted by 420 is 0. So my answer is 3. So dividing the decimal, there are several things that we need to remember. So when we have a divisor with a decimal, we need to move our decimal in the divisor to the right to create a whole number. Which means that we are multiplying by powers of 10. Now, for when we have and then we're going to do this also in the dividend. So move the same number over in the dividend. Now, when we have a problem like the second one, where we have a decimal point in our dividend, our answer, our quotient, needs to have the decimal point move straight above it. So dividend with a decimal, we are going to move or align the decimal in the quotient. And then if we are dividing a number and it needs to have a decimal point, let's refresh ourselves with that one. So just doing a long division problem that happens to have a decimal point in it. So we are going to do 8 divided by 180. So 8 goes into 18. 8 goes into 18 twice. That is 16. I'm going to subtract. 8 goes into 20 twice, and that's 16. So that is 4. I'm going to add my decimal point and add my decimal point up top. So in my dividend and in my quotient, I'm going to put a 0, and I'm going to bring down my 0 here. 8 goes into 40 5 times. So my answer is 22.5. So when we are dividing and we need to have a decimal point, we add our decimal point after our ones place, and then we are going to add in a zero in our dividend. Our quotient, we make sure that our decimal points are aligned, and we divide our next number. So this is a mini lesson on dividing decimals. It's one of our longer mini lessons, but make sure you watch it, take notes.